Hi, my name is Michael Bean, and this is your free lesson from myfreeactingclass.com for Monday, November the 22nd. I'm a professional acting teacher. I've been teaching for almost 20 years. I've been running these online classes with a little bit of hiatus over this last summer since the pandemic started. Today, we are doing our self-tape review, and we have a special guest. This is Ben Cockell, who joined us in December of 2020 to review a winning self-tape. So this is a self-tape that he made that got him the job on a Disney Plus show called Mysterious Benedict Society. Ben is based out of Vancouver, Canada, or at least he is currently, because he just found out that he's going to Los Angeles to tape season 2 of the Mysterious Benedict Society, which is pretty exciting. And so Ben's going to talk to us about the experience of being on set in his first recurring role. And we're going to have the opportunity to review his self-tape and then review the scenes from the actual show, so that Ben can talk to us about the difference between sort of doing that tape at home, and then doing the work on set, and so what that was like in terms of the kind of support and what the work felt like, and so that you can see for yourself. And this is what I love about watching successful self-tapes, is that we get to see that a self-tape does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be exactly like what's going to be in the show, because you just cannot know that when you are making a self-tape at home. And so you don't have to take Michael Bean, acting teacher's, word for it. We can watch the real thing and you can see for yourself. So without further ado, here we go. This is Ben Cockell. Ben, thanks so much for making time today. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
And so it's been like a really sort of full last year for you, right? And there was Mysterious Benedict, and then sort of that took you into a couple of other projects. You want to just sort of quickly give us the rundown of what your last years looked like?
Yeah, totally. Well, I was in screenwriting school. I did a screenwriting program at Vancouver Film School, and then wasn't for you too?
Hey, he's back.
Are you back?
I'm back.
Okay.
You're like, I'm here snuggled up to my router, but it looks like it was me. Okay.
Okay, all good. I thought you were just like listening with a really
very intently. Yeah.
Blinking. I was like, I can't tell if Michael's just a really attentive listener or whether he's completely frozen. I think both. But
let's try this again. The last thing that I heard on my end, so the last thing that my computer probably picked up for the recording and the folks know, is that you took the screenwriting program at VFS.
I did, yeah. And then afterwards, I got the role in the Mysterious Benedict Society. And so I was shooting that from September of 2020 to January of 2021, which was awesome. I learned a whole lot. And yeah, that was like my first like proper role. Like before I'd had, just like a line here or there and a few things, but this was like my first role that I really got to explore and be on for a while. And then after that, in March, I got to work on a Hallmark movie for a little bit. And then after that, I had a different recurring role in Superman and Lois, which was the other thing that was sort of big from this year. That was, got that role in April, and that sort of finished in June. So yeah.
Okay.
It was a good year.
Yeah, and would you say that at this point, most of your auditions are self-tapes?
Exclusively, yeah.
Okay.
I only do self-tapes. I haven't been sent for an in-person audition in a really long time, but there are a few Zoom auditions as well.
Right, that's showing up as consistent with most of my peers, most of my students, that it looks like even as things are opening up in Vancouver, and even for the actors based in Vancouver, there just is not a strong move back to in-person auditions. Yeah. But the only time lately that I've seen clients pushing for that is for commercials, and I think that even that's shifting towards self-tapes.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I haven't been in person yet, which I'm personally okay with. I know that
Yes.
a lot of people, especially people who have kids in the house and want to get out, like definitely prefer in-person auditions, I've heard. But for me personally, I do really enjoy self-tape, so
Yep.
I'm okay with
Can
it.
you say why? What is it about self-tapes that works for you?
Um, well, it might just be personally my setup, but I mean, uh, I get creative control. I get to decide what I want to send of myself and what I think is best to myself. And um, yeah, I think it's just having the creative control. It also means I get to work with people I really trust to coach me or to work with. Yeah, that's basically why.
Uh, there's a lot to be said for the flexible scheduling of self-tape auditions too, not having
That
to.
is true. Yeah, I really don't like waiting in a waiting room full of people who look somewhat like me as well. That is also
Right.
really refreshing. I enjoy that.
And having to put one schedule on hold on 24 hours notice to go into a room for 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about how horrible that was. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's not great. So no, it is nice to be able to do it from home.
Something that I've seen over the course of the last year and a half of teaching online. Before that, I didn't do a lot of teaching online, but of course, I've done a lot of that in the last year and a half. Is that some students, and again, like some of the folks I coach or some of my peers, will report not feeling the same uh, when they're doing a self-tape at home. They're like, it doesn't feel the same to me. And that just makes perfect intuitive sense. Like it literally is not the same. Like you are not there with a real person. You're not able to make eye contact and take cues from everything the other person's body is doing, et cetera, et cetera. What's really interesting to me is that the work comes across on camera the same. So I think that for some actors, the subjective experience of doing a tape at home or working via Zoom is different. Yeah, and how could it not be? That the work is still just as good, certainly can be just as good on camera. Yeah, and to me, that that's what matters, and to me that helps it make sense that auditions are staying as self-tapes, right? They can just see more folks that way. One of the things that I have been over in class and will continue to go over is that given that that with self-tapes they're seeing more actors than they were previously, I think the first between 5 and 15 seconds of one self-tape is even more important than it used to be. And lately, I've been reading about confirmation bias and some of these. There's a bias or psychological effect called exaggerated coherence, where you sort of jump to a quick conclusion and you just look for evidence why the thing that feels intuitively right is accurate. And so I was listening to a book by a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist named Daniel Kahneman just the other day. He's talking about this quality of exaggerated coherence. And I think that is extremely relevant for actors, because the decision makers, whether that's the casting directors who are sort of the gatekeepers or the actual decision makers, the directors, producers, I think they're having that experience in the first 5, 10, 15 seconds of watching a tape. And then they are looking for things that either confirm or do not confirm whatever that initial impression is. And so one of the reasons why I think self-tape setup is really important. And something that I think is going to be fun to watch in Ben's tape today, just look at sort of what your impression of the character is in the first 15 seconds, and then look what they were going for on the show. Yeah. And
Yeah, I'm very curious what people's impression of Jackson would be in the first 15
right.
seconds.
So Ben, do you want to how about if we watch the audition tape first,
Sounds good.
and then you can talk to us a little bit about that process, to sort of remind us what happened after that, and then let's watch the show.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So here's Ben's audition tape for this character.
Transfers? How long have you been waiting?
Not long, forever.
You didn't really take the initiative, did you?
We followed instructions.
You always follow instructions.
When appropriate.
Oh, some kind of rebel. I see.
What?
Totally
Just
kidding. I'm Jackson. She's Jilson. We're in charge of you four. Now let's get you checked into your rooms.
Satellite TV. You can watch anytime. It's great.
So, like after we get our homework done?
Anytime. Flip it on right now if you'd like. It's encouraged. Don't worry. Same screen dimensions as the one in the boys' room. I'm sure they're enjoying it right now. You're all orphans, huh?
Some of us. Most of us.
That is sad.
So sad.
But there are a ton of orphans here, so it's not like a big deal. It's common.
Which is not to say it's a bummer here. It's upbeat, the vibe. Unless you make it a bummer.
We can't control that.
So, do we get some kind of tour?
East Campus is all dorms, with the exception of several classrooms. North Campus encompasses all campuses except East Campus, including South Campus.
It sounds confusing, but it isn't confusing, which happens to be an important principle you'll learn here at the Institute.
What's that?
The tower.
You have no reason to go there unless the headmaster calls you specifically to a meeting, or unless you become messengers.
So unlikely it'll ever become relevant to you.
Room free, you can go absolutely anywhere you want, so long as you stay on the paths.
Why?
It's dangerous off the paths. There's all kinds of abandoned mine shafts. The island is rich in precious metals, a fact our headmaster only discovered after he bought it.
He's used his wealth to create the school that surrounds you today, a free school. He doesn't even want attention. He's interested only in the broadening of the minds of the next generation.
And who is the headmaster?
He prefers to introduce himself. You'll meet him soon.
Ben, do you remember anything that they told you in the breakdown? I mean, obviously, you've learned so much more about the character, but do you remember what they told you initially about it? Looks like you were. Okay, here we go.
I can speak. Yes, in the breakdown for that character, yeah, it would be interesting. I bet you I still have it somewhere. It might take too long to find, but I do believe that they said that he's a bit of a perfectionist, a bit of a control freak. They said that he was quite preppy. They said it is okay to be weird. And they said that that the show is stylized, like it has I think they were still figuring out what the tone of the show was, but it's quirky. It's kind of Wes Anderson were kind of some reference points that were given. And I've been watching Wes Anderson films since I was a tiny kid. So I was like, okay, that's a pocket that I kind of know where that lives. And I'd read the book series. I was a huge fan of the book series that the show is based on. So I kind of knew the whimsical land that it lived in. And I knew this character, like I'd grown up reading, this character, and the book version of the character is completely different from the me version of it and the way that character is written and sort of what I did with it. But I still knew kind of where it was sitting.
Okay, so you get some of that backstory. Great.
Yeah.
And then what was it like after this first self-tape? Did they do a couple of rounds of Zoom callbacks or?
No, that's the crazy thing, because it's like I previously auditioned for a different character in the show called SQ. And I guess they liked that one because they wanted to see me again.
They ended up casting somebody younger than you. It's a student of mine who's also been a guest on the lessons.
Oh, Ricky?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, he's great. I got to, I don't have any scenes with him in the show, but he was on set all the time and I was around him quite a bit. So no, he's a lovely guy. But that was the role. He's perfectly cut out for it too. But that was what I had originally auditioned for. And I was like, oh man, I think I might be too old for this or something, but I really love this show. I'd like to be a part of it. And then luckily I got sent another tape, and honestly, I got cast right off that tape. There was no other calls. There was no, there was a very anxiety-ridden week of shortlist of, is this going to happen or not? But no, there was no more callbacks or meetings or anything.
Okay. And had you, did you have a callback for the previous role? Like had you,
No.
Okay, so your interaction with the decision makers was all tape, just the tape for the first character?
It was all tape. they cast me, and then they did a chemistry read with my twin,
Yeah.
but we were both already cast. So it was a read to see whether we got along, but it was sort of like, okay, well, you guys are the guys. Let's just see if you get along. And we did, luckily. So that
That's
was
great.
good.
For anybody who's watching who doesn't know, will you just give a little bit of context for that, what you said about sort of the anxiety-provoking week of being on hold?
Yeah, totally. So basically, if they like you, then you get a little email saying that you're shortlisted, or maybe it happens different for different people, but that's the way it happens for me, is that I get an email saying that you're shortlisted. And then, yeah, there's just kind of a week of me constantly checking my email and visualizing my agent's name popping up on my phone. And, and, you know, for a phone call, because he phones if it's a go. You know, often it doesn't happen, and sometimes it does, and this time it did, and then there was much celebration. But yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking because I felt like this is the one.
Recently, I had an interaction with a parent, somebody whose daughter was cast as a recurring character on a TV show, and it was sort of her first gig, and so she was transitioning into auditioning afterwards. And so the parent really first had this experience of like, yeah, wow, my daughter's on TV, and then was trying to orient to auditioning, and the kid was fine. Like, she's 5. She doesn't care about what happens after each audition. Like, she's like, not remembering them at all. But the parent was taking each rejection really hard. Like, every time his kid didn't book in the audition, he was like, oh, ah. And I had to have this whole exchange with him, about the how important it is to just reorient to process as much as possible, and to just sort of remember that every time somebody gets selected for a tape, they've said no to 3 times as many candidates as they've said yes to. And I think that especially for folks starting up, that it can be really nerve-wracking. Like, first, to feel like each audition, sort of one's entire artistic worth and merit hangs upon each audition, as opposed to going, oh, great, like I made it into the competition this time. I have been selected, and because they always had the option to select other people besides me, this is actually meaningful, especially if the same person keeps bringing me in, right? So, for instance, these folks brought you in for a previous role. They brought you in for this role as well. Like, that's meaningful because they had more options than you to choose from, right? So that example, if you listen to Ben's story, I think is really important, is really relevant, right? That his audition for a previous role that ultimately he wasn't a great fit for, was relationship building with the casting director, with the decision makers, so that it was much easier for them to see him for this role as well.
Oh, sorry, Michael, you were frozen for quite a while there. I think we missed some of that.
Well, hopefully the recording on my end got it, because it's all happening on my computer.
Okay.
Oh boy, technology. Okay, back to Ben Cockell. So you pick your particular brand of weird. They're like, yep, we like it. They hire you, and you get to set. And then what does the conversation with creative folks look like, either before you get to set or once you get to set?
For that part?
Yeah.
Well, first I got to meet Catherine, who you'll see in a second,
Yep.
playing my twin. And so we got to know each other just like before we shot, just because, I mean, those characters are, just always around one another. So I guess creatively we had conversations together, and we had a Zoom call with the director of the second episode, Greg Beeman, who just, he really wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page tonally, and that we could actually do the back and forth. And I think he was happy with what he saw in that call. So that was a lot of the creative conversations before shooting. And then, like, once I got to set, it was just I hadn't been on a film set in so long because of school and the pandemic. And so it was getting reaccustomed to the flow of things. No, it was really exciting, and creative conversations. I don't know. I don't know
Do you
if
remember anything that the director said in about the tone? Or was it just the two of you did a read and he was mostly just sort of listening and tweaking what was happening, or was it something else?
Yeah, it was a balance in that first episode of what was too broad and what wasn't, because everything in the show, for the most part, the characters are pretty heartfelt, even if they're weird. Like they're usually pretty loaded with emotion, even if they're kind of strange. And Jackson and Jilson, I think, are a little bit tricky because they're kind of the outer limits of quirk for the show, I would say, in terms of like how far it pushes being quirky. So it was just figuring out what is too broad and too mannered. I think sometimes when my Canadian accent would come through maybe a little bit, maybe he was hearing that it was sounding a bit mannered or almost British because he's such a formal character. So I think it was finding a place where they fit into the tone of the show and it wasn't too over the top, but it was still just as strange. And I think definitely throughout the course of the show, we definitely found that.
And for anybody who's watching who hasn't had the opportunity to actually be on set, did you have much conversation with the director on set, or was it mostly kind of getting on the same page, doing the prep, kind of going in and delivering something in between?
There isn't tons of conversation. You kind of have to do your own work and then just show up prepared and then get ready to shoot. For that first episode, Greg is like, the director was really hands-on. Like he really comes out of Video Village a lot and walks over and really wants to interact with people. He's very excited. So that was really nice because he did want to talk to us about it, but it wasn't like we were doing any sort of character breakdowns or analysis on set. Like that was, the time for that is done. We're shooting. Now it's just about the scene at hand and that line or that movement or, just the real specifics really on the day were all we were talking about.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to say about it before we watch this from the show?
The second one? No, I'm curious to see. I hadn't seen that first tape in so long that it was pretty surreal to see. And so I'm curious to see what I see when they're back to back.
One of the things that stood out for me, is how much more layered the performance got. Right.
Oh, great. That's good to hear.
Right. I think that in the tape, you just made like a really like clear, strong choice. And you kind of came in with this like, what you called the like Wes Anderson, formalness. You knew about the character. And then one of the things that I want everybody to pay attention to is that, of course, like the work gets more nuanced because he's got so much more time between when he books the role and when he's actually on set. Once they're actually paying you, it's much easier to prioritize doing a bunch of preparation on it.
It was 1 week versus 1 month. It was night and day. Yeah,
exactly. And also sometimes one will have 2 auditions in a day, or 5 in a week, and it's just not realistic, to bring everything you have as an artist to bear on every audition. I think the focus on process for me is that the reason you do that over and over and over again is so that so much of it is internalized, so that when you get something the night before and prepare it, you can make your clear choice and go in that. That's my impression. You're watching it. I would be curious to see what you.
I'm glad. I'm watching it back. I haven't seen this in a while, so
yeah, great. Let's check it out. Okay.
Transfers. How long have you been waiting?
Forever.
Didn't really take the initiative, did you?
We followed instructions.
Do you always follow instructions?
Huh. inappropriate.
Oh, some kind of rebel. I see.
What?
Just kidding.
Totally kidding. I'm Jackson.
And I'm Jilson.
We're in charge of you four. Let's get you checked into your rooms.
This is it. Satellite TV. You can watch anytime. It's great.
You mean after we get our homework done?
Anytime. Flip it on right now if you want. It's encouraged. Don't worry. Same screen dimensions as the ones in the boys' room. I'm sure they're enjoying it right now. You're all orphans, huh?
Some of us?
That is sad.
So sad.
But there are a ton of orphans here. It's not a big deal. It's common.
Which is not to say it's a bummer here. It's upbeat. The vibe, unless you make it a bummer.
We can't control that.
East Campus is all dorms, with the exception of several classrooms. North Campus encompasses all campuses, except East Campus, including South Campus.
It sounds confusing, but it isn't confusing, which happens to be an important principle you'll learn here at the Institute.
What's that?
The tower.
You have no reason to go there, unless you become messengers.
So not likely it'll ever become relevant to you.
Not so high on these two.
And, who is the headmaster?
He prefers to introduce himself. You'll meet him soon.
The free market.
Must always be free.
The free.
There you go. Yeah, okay, I got you.
There we go.
So what stands out for you watching the two back to back?
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, I can definitely see that I've settled in. I mean, I know all the behind the scenes stuff of how I was feeling on those days and stuff. So I guess I'm watching it differently. But no, I was happy with definitely the first scene and the one where we're walking. I was really happy with the way those came together. I just remember it was really my first day was the day where we're in the yellow room.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember how utterly nervous I was. So when I watch it, it's hard to disconnect from the nerves I felt on that first day. And so I guess because I was more settled in as an actor in the other two scenes, because they're just later in the shooting schedule, I can relax more when I watch those. But when I see that second scene, I'm still kind of like, oh my God, hope you stick the landing, buddy.
You're looking for the signs of nervousness, even if the rest of us, we wouldn't see them.
Yeah, 100% I am. Yeah, and I remember like right before we were shooting, I was given an accent note about it's not a big deal. Like they asked me to do like an NAHT and like make it more American. And so whenever I've seen that episode a few times, and whenever I say Nat, I can't unhear. I'm like, oh, that sounds weird. I wish I could take another run at that.
Right.
Yeah, just because I'm like, oh, I wasn't used to saying it that way. And then later on, I just got more used to it, and it kind of took care of itself. But no, definitely when I'm watching that scene, I was like, oh, when's the Nat coming? But no, I love that show, so it's fun to rewatch it again.
One of the things that you heard Ben say earlier was about how the breakdown said stylized. And so you can see that he just made like a really clear stylistic choice in the audition, and that the performance definitely like carried some of that, but obviously it's something that once the director saw that Ben could work with the character, they're like, okay, great, like turn this up a little bit, turn this down a little bit. If that piece is really normal. I think that It's one of my story questions, that I've gone over in these lessons before is, what is the style of the show? Yeah, and
Oh,
Ben had a pretty solid.
Michael, it was frozen for a while. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Like as long as I get you, when we come back to you, then I think the video will be fine.
Okay, all good. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's all good. Um, okay, so what would you say was your main takeaway from the show, like in terms of what your own like learning and growth, or the like ease and comfort that you developed there?
Yeah, I mean, it was enormous. I definitely saw huge strides in my work after being on set and working for those months. I definitely, while I was shooting, I found a lot of improvement in my self tapes, and afterwards for sure.
Oh,
I
okay.
got a lot more comfortable on camera. Yeah, it changed a lot. Yeah, that show means a lot to me. It was my first, sort of proper acting job, and yeah, I made some good friends, and I learned so much about filmmaking. And because I want to direct, just watching how it all came together was like film school part 2 on steroids. It was so great to just be there, learning about all the positions and all the filmmaking side of things while I was learning about the acting. And yeah, before I thought about like, I don't know, before coming in, I was thinking about like what was like one of the biggest learning curves that I had when I was there, and a lot of it was learning to act without a scene partner across from you was not something that I thought I'd run into a lot outside of the audition space. Like, sometimes you just have a reader for an audition and it's not really like having a scene partner. But I thought like, okay, always while you're on set, you have another actor with you. But because the kids a lot of the time had to go to school and they would shoot them out first, and then it would just be us alone, we were doing a lot of those scenes that you just saw even with X's. So there was just like X's on around the camera that were just visual marks for us to look at that we were acting with. Or, there's other scenes that have green screen usage or a CGI bird or something. And I guess that was a huge learning curve. I just had no idea how much make-believe was at play. And so that was a big learning curve. Just being able to keep it together and act against essentially nothing and still make it feel believable.
Great. It sounds like that was sort of directly relevant to the kind of practice you were doing in audition tapes and your own practice before that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it was a lot more, it's completely different. And that one skill was also a lot more similar than I thought it would be. There's lots that was completely different, but that one skill, I was like, okay, actually you are just kind of making it up with a mark a lot of the time anyways. So it's not a waste of time.
And so having that skill or that comfort in your body now, is there, like, if you could go back in time to sort of you in the 6 months before the show and say, okay, like here's the thing, like, do you think there's any way that you could communicate some of that comfort, or sort of give yourself like a tip that would kind of move you closer to it?
Ooh, that's tricky. I think it was so experiential for me. Like I just slowly getting it in your bones over time. Like, you're saying that I seemed a lot more settled in, or that the character seemed a lot more nuanced in the second version. And like, there wasn't one day where I was like, okay, this is the thing. It was just having time with it. And it really was that just having so many hours just there on set. I don't know what one specific tip I would give myself. But I know 6 months before that, well, you actually helped me with this, but keeping still would be maybe one thing. I remember when I was in your class, I would move around a lot during my scenes. And for certain scenes, you got me to keep my head still and keep sort of a straight back, some kind of poise and stuff. And then, that was a great new skill to unlock. And now that's basically what I make a living doing, just being really still and creepy. So I'd say 6 months before that role, I was not used to being super still on camera and keeping all my sort of energy contained in my eyes and stuff. And I thought that I might need to overdo it with how much physicality it was, and I sort of maybe bringing more of stage acting maybe to the table. But yeah, I think just relaxing my face and knowing that no, the camera's going to pick up stuff even if you're like deadly still, was definitely a learning curve, and something that that character helped me with, because he is often so eerily still. And the character in Superman was also often eerily still. So I think being able to be comfortable being totally still on camera was something I would have maybe tried to talk to myself, my younger self, about.
Great. That's a super actionable, concrete thing for folks watching the tape.
Hope so.
Okay. Is there any other pearls of wisdom that you want to drop on us before we transition to watching some self-tapes?
Oh, I don't know.
You could also tell us, have you spent any time in Los Angeles? Like, you're having to relocate there for season 2 coming up pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I haven't spent any time there yet, but I'm going to be going over in January, which I'm very excited about.
I was just going to say, tell us what you're excited about then.
Oh, I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about going to LA, and I haven't been able to travel a lot, obviously, since the pandemic. So I'm really excited to go over there and see old cast friends again, and work in a new city. I mean, that's been a dream of mine for a while. That was definitely sort of a secretly held goal for the next year, was that I'd be able to travel for a part. That was kind of a dream of mine. And so the fact that it's this show that I get to do it with is definitely a dream. So I'm excited to go over there and make a short film afterwards, hopefully. So those are kind of some things that I'm looking forward to in the new year.
I will be super curious to hear if how the experience for you is different, because I'm sure most of the crew is going to be different. And so,
oh yeah, all different crew.
Yeah, right. I'm fascinated to hear how that affects your experience, if it does at all.
Yeah, and just like working around almost completely Americans will be a totally different experience too.
Yes,
I'm sure, just because, the crew is still Canadian, even though the show is American. So now it's American show, American crew. I'm sure it'll be a different energy on set, so I'm just curious how it's going to go out. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I have any words of wisdom, but just be kind to yourselves.
Love it. Awesome. Ben, thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, yes, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now that we've wrapped up with Ben Cockell, it's time for some self-tape review. So quick reminder that I have not been overloaded with requests, and so it's really easy, especially the first sort of 5 or 10 folks every month who are like, I want to do a self-tape, but I don't have a practice scene. Send me a scene to practice with. Just email me info@myfreeactingclass.com. Let me know the age and if you want a comedy or drama, and I will send you a short scene that you can work on, and hopefully we can get a couple of different takes over the month. So I've done that with Christina and Natalia. We're going to see their scenes, and then we're going to look at a couple of self-tapes that Duke sent us. These are ones that he actually submitted for auditions, and we're going to talk about all of those. So first up, this is Natalia's self-tape. She asked for a comedic scene. This is like a mild comedy. It was from a show called No Tomorrow. The character is sitting and sort of making somewhat flirtatious conversation, with a guy who sort of reveals to her that he thinks that an asteroid is going to hit the Earth and the world is going to end.
Oh, well, it's been certainly interesting.
Oh, I get it. You think I'm nuts.
Oh, no. It's a little bit different from what I expected.
What's that?
Oh, no. Not nuts.
I used to.
So Natalia did say that she knew that the microphone noise was an issue. To start with, this kind of really basics for self-tape. What we've got, is frame is medium close-up, top of the head to just below the armpits. Check. She's got an eye light reflecting her eyes. Check. There's a relatively neutral background, not a lot of distracting things to draw our eyeball focus. Check, check. Audio, she is louder than her reader. Definitely working for us. It looks like, or to me, what it sounds like is that her microphone is pinned to her outfit somewhere. And so it is rustling, or she's rubbing against it. Maybe her hair is rubbing against it if it's pinned onto her sweater, where her hair is falling there. And so we're getting a fair amount of microphone noise that is distracting. Anything that makes it somewhat more effortful for folks to listen to or watch your tape is problematic if you're looking at a self-tape. And so it's a fairly easy technical correction to make. Honestly, I think that is always worth redoing. Also, I think this is one of the most important reasons if you are doing an actual self-tape, if you are recording something at home that you're going to send in to folks later, that it's a really great idea to listen back to a piece of your own self-tape, or just to watch your best take or listen to your best take. One of the things that I recommend doing is right at the very beginning, sort of after your first even sample take, before you're even properly recording, listen back to a piece of it so you can tell, okay, am I louder than my reader is? Is there anything that's distracting about the lighting or the audio that I can adjust? And it's so much better to know that at the very beginning than after you've done 9 takes and sort of done the one that you feel the best about, and then you're like, technical. So that's my advice on that.
Just be a regular guy with a tight flex and a jaw.
Oh yeah, doing what?
Copy editing for a science. Oh, it's going to buzz right by Earth in 8 months and 12 days.
An asteroid is going to hit the planet. Okay, then why wouldn't NASA told us about it?
They don't know about it, or maybe they do, and I don't know. They wouldn't answer my emails.
Emails. Well, I think they would told us if an asteroid was going to hit the planet.
Would they?
Of course.
Less, they were afraid people would start freaking out.
That is absurd.
This one checks out. I did the math.
Oh my God.
Too much.
So great technical setup. I love Natalia's attack. Natalia has been super consistent over the last 1.5 years about doing practice tapes, submitting tapes. I also know that she wants the real deal in terms of feedback. So Natalia, I really hope that you do this one for us again. Love to see another take of it next week. I would say that technically speaking, there's the pacing, is a little bit slow, and my guess is that that's just the you remembering lines. I would be interested in seeing what it's like if you come back to this, and hopefully it's a little bit easier the next time you find the kind of conversational back and forth of it. There's a fair amount of extraneous movement, kind of unnecessary movement in the scene. And I don't really get a sense of where you are or what's happening. And so if we look at the script, I think it's important to decide, okay, where are they? What's happening? Can we get some sense of that? So I'm just going to pull up the script for everybody here. And if we're thinking about moment before or moment after, what we've got here is interior Xavier's house moments later. Xavier follows Sarah to the front door. Right, so it looks here as though she's leaving. Has it been a fantastic date? Has it been a terrible date? We don't know. Hold on, I think no, just not what I thought it'd be. No, not nuts, etc., etc. There's a flashback, etc., etc. Back to the present. Right, so you could choose to alter this. You could say, I don't want to do it walking towards the door. I want to do it sitting and having dinner. Sure. But I think that having some kind of moment before what has happened right before this and what's going to happen right after it, we had more of the moment after the like, whoa, at the end, she's supposed to be looking at a slideshow. What I'm not getting here is style. I'm not getting comedy, so this could use quite a bit more lightness. And I think that you find that the best avenue for that is the relationship with the other character. So look at that relationship, right? My guess is that if there's this much airtime for these two, then this is an important relationship. And so I would be really interested in seeing what it's like if Xavier, the guy you're talking to, is much more charming or much cuter or much more interesting, so that it's like, here's this really amazing date with this really cute guy, but he's a little wacky and into asteroids. So, maybe it's time to get your coat and go. Because right now, the scene reads as explicitly judgmental, and like, ugh. It also doesn't have much arc. It sort of has that judgmental tone to it, and then it stays there over the course of the scene. And one of the things that we really want to see is changes. We want to see when is the new thought, when is the shift in the emotional tone. Now, in a script, sometimes, like the one Natalia has, that'll be marked as beat. And there's a bunch of these written into the script, beat. And so one of the opportunities that you have here, Natalia, is to look at these beats and go, okay, what kind of change can I put in there? What can I get out of the scene, to find that comedy? Because right now the comedy is not popping. And I get it. This is one of those scripts which I think I'll find a lot, with especially things that are kind of prime time, or that are more mainstream comedy. A lot of them, the comedy comes from the relationships, the comedy comes from the situation. If you're doing sitcom, then yeah, you'll see it in the writing all over the place. But sometimes with this, you've got to bring something of your own to it. So that, I think, that is the challenge with this scene, is like, can you find the comedy? Can you find the relationship with the guy? Right? So that, on some level, we're like, okay, it makes sense why she doesn't just leave. Right? Like, if he's that wackadoo and you think his ideas are that nuts, like, what are you still doing there? Get out of there. But that's not the way the scene goes. So clearly there's something holding you. And I would say that that's the interesting of the relationship with the guy. Okay, let's take a look at Christina's scene. So Christina, Christina again has been very wonderfully consistent about sending us footage from her practice scenes. So this one's on YouTube. Hopefully it looks okay on your end. Again, she asked for a comedy. I assigned her a character called Blythe in a show called The Sitter.
Can I tell you my gossip now?
Is it gonna freak me out? Because I'm really a fan of her own life, and I don't think I can deal right now.
I saw Daddy kissing his assistant Deborah. That's why he spends so late at the hospital. Because he spends all night kissing Deborah. My mom knows. She pretends like she doesn't know. But she knows.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Blythe,
Okay, so let's go back to Christina's tape for 1 second, just so we can quickly talk technology. Right, so medium close up, top of the head to just below the armpits, check. Eye light reflection in her eyes, check. Eye line, so the line between her eyes, which she's looking at, very close to the side of the camera. Could even be a little closer to camera, Christina, as long as it's not directly at the lens, but could be a little bit closer to camera. Neutral background, fantastic, right? So she and her audio is louder than that of the reader. Lots of different ways to do that. If you're reading with somebody on a computer, great, you just turn their volume down. If you're reading with a human being, you just put them further away from whatever the recording device is than you are, and probably you're okay. Especially with a phone, whoever's closest, the phone will pick up the loudest. So my main note on this one, Christina, and again, I hope you do another tape for us, is that you asked for comedy. This is a comedy. So I think both Natalia and Christina fell into a classic trap. These are the scenes, if you just read the text of these two scenes, they're talking about dark, weird stuff. The first one, is like sort of a weirdo end of a date where the guy's like, the world's gonna end. The second one, is a girl who's just like dropping a bunch of stuff about her, dad's affair. But if you looked up the word blithe and you just looked it up in a dictionary to find out what it meant, that would give you a clue to this. But also, it's comedy, and so the other thing, because this is a project. So Christine, if you were getting this as a breakdown from your agent, you would have more information. But what we can do here is we can look it up on IMDb, and you will see that, and I found it, that the sitter is 2011, Jonah Hill. It is a college student on suspension is coaxed into babysitting the kids next door, though he's fully unprepared for the wild night ahead of him. Right, so looks like a sort of crazy, the romp. It's where is it? It's R-rated, I think, and so what does that fall into, like sex comedy, maybe, or like adolescent sex comedy, definitely not like deep, dark, like I'm gonna reveal my dad's affair. This is, and so look for the comedy. Look for like, what kind of reaction does your character want here? Do you want to like show off how mature you are? Like, yeah, I know about affairs, and let me tell you about my dad's affair. Is it like, are you looking to shock him? But whatever it is, if you can find something to delight in it, and I know that is opposite the initial impression of the lines, and I think that you just fell into that trap of, well, if this was me in this place doing this thing, here's how I might feel about it. And that's why it's so important to look at style, so important to look at story. Okay, let's take that into our last self-tape and look at Duke's self-tape. We've got a couple of them, one for an SOC commercial and one for an indie project. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go, Duke.
Hey, kiddo, I got something for you.
Go. So the technical setup, what we've got is, like nice even lighting, light reflecting the eyes, eye line is nice and close to camera, right? So right beside camera. Christina, you can see what I was saying. Maybe the Duke's is like just very, very close to camera without being directly at, so we can see even more of his face. Duke, if you were cutting this, especially in a program like iMovie and the tape from a couple of weeks ago, I walked everybody through how to do this. I would crop it in so that you were just seeing top of the head, to just below the armpits. Unless there's a lot of movement in a scene, it's sort of required to tell the story. I don't think that it is necessary, or I don't think that it helps you to bring that in for a scene like this. That's just my opinion. The audio, and I'm sure you already know this, is pretty echoey in this tape where you are right now. So audio quality might be another thing to think about. And honestly, that might be a simple, like you might be able to solve both of those problems by just bringing your recording device right up into your face. Then we would get you in that medium close up and the audio would be cleaner. That's my, like, it doesn't require extra technology, not fancy advice for sort of getting a boost in the impression right off the top.
Suggesting next time I believe I just shank someone.
That would definitely be effective. Your mom means a lot to me. You mean a lot to her. My dad wasn't the nicest, but it meant a lot that he passed this down to me, so I want to do the same. That's kind of the point.
You're not my dad, though.
I'm planning on asking your mom to marry me at the lake.
I don't really know what to say.
Just take it. Here, let me help.
Thank you. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just don't fucking cut yourself, or I'll never hear the end of it.
Okay, so so aside from the like technical adjustment, Duke, I love how much of your personality you're bringing to this. I've seen a couple of tapes from you, where it looked like you were sort of like really trying to be in a box, where you were like, no, I will be like a scientist. And in this one, I was like, okay, I think that I'm seeing like Duke being Duke, and that's more interesting to me. Like I'm seeing more of your personality in this. And so in that respect, this is probably like the best self-tape that you've sent to me anyway. Right, because there's ease in it. And I think that is just really your best option. I think that that again, for me, just listening to it, pacing is off a little bit, and it might be that in the script there's a bunch of long pauses written there, which will make sense when they shoot the actual thing, and there's lots of footage of the girl's face, like thinking hard about it. But if I was there with your reader, I would just ask your reader to take those pauses out, because most of the big pauses are on the reader's side. I also think that there's some places where you are like physicalizing or indicating your own beats in a way that is not strictly speaking necessary, right? And if the camera moves in closer to you, right, if you're here, then it's enough in that little pause to be like, I'm talking to you about a thing, and then I'm back, and that can be enough. And what I'm seeing right now is something that's more like which, like, if you're doing a broad comedic character, you definitely can get away with, but I think it's important to be really intentional about when you do that, because it's just so significant. The thing that Ben was saying about stillness is relevant for pretty much all film and TV acting. And of course, you don't want to be in a box. So it's this push-pull, right? Of like, okay, don't want to be in a box, but I also don't want to be telling the story in a way that is unclear. And so if you wanted to do that scene again, then I think it would just be a matter of like tightening up the pacing a little bit, which, like I said, a lot of that's on your reader. Seeing if we can get your audio better, and then playing with that relationship, with that objective and obstacle, right? Like looks to me like you want the kid to like you, and that the obstacle is that she's whatever, that there's some obstacle in her personality or in her like you're my mom's boyfriend, whatever that is. And so finding that push pull and tracking that to the scene, and putting that into, so when have you had that experience? And maybe you haven't had it with a teenager, but when have you, like, I don't know, met your girlfriend's mom and really wanted to impress her? Does that make sense as a substitution? No, but it's the energy of it. It's the like, hey, like, I'm cool, look at me, I want to impress you, I want to make this connection. Just finding something in yourself where you can personalize it and really relate to it. So the other thing that Duke sent was a silent on camera audition. These ones are so tricky, so I'm really glad that you shared it with us. He also sent an email saying, like, what do you even do for this? This is baffling. And so let me show everybody what that looks like. Duke, thank you for sharing with us. And there it is. And so I would say that, SOC, or silent on camera audition, so hard to get it really clear. This one's about a blood sugar monitor, and it's somebody who's supposed to be sort of really nervous and looking around the restaurant, and then in the next scene they're like, oh yeah, now I'm totally calm and relaxed about the desserts that are coming into my life. There's a couple of things here. I think that just playing with this one and not expecting yourself to know before you see it, but like do it and then watch it back and go, is this story coming through nice and clearly? Because watching it back, like I had the script to look at because you sent it to me. Thank you for that. I still couldn't tell exactly which script it was because what you were reacting to was really hard to figure out. And so I would say spend a little more time when you're recording, like recording it and then watching it going, okay, if I just approach this technically, what do I have to do? Where do I have to put my eye lines? How can I tweak those reactions to make the story that they've given me as clear as possible? And then I would say you also made this extra and probably like unnecessarily challenging for yourself by falling into like the trap of silent on camera auditions, which is you felt like you had to be silent, which especially in the second scene meant you got into mime, and got into like almost pantomime because you were like, and but you didn't make sound, you didn't make noise, you didn't give me an wow, like that. Silent on camera means that they're not going to pay you to say lines. It does not mean you have to be completely silent in your audition. And so you can ad lib, you can put in like little sounds and words. I think it's actually really important to find ease with it, and that otherwise you accidentally end up getting to this like modest theatricality, that goes with the, like I said, the almost pantomime-y, quality that we saw in going into scene 2. So hopefully that helps a little bit. We're a smidge over time, but do you have any questions about that, dude?
No. Well, did you know that I was the blood sugar monitor's friend in that one?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, it was that complicated. I was the friend of the guy watching the blood sugar monitor. So I wasn't even the main character in that scene. Yeah, okay.
So, ad libs, subtlety, and just playing with it until you can try and get to like the tight visual version, that tries to tell the story. I don't know exactly how we would do that. Looking at it, I'm like, we'd just have to try it, 7 times in a row and see what worked. Yeah, that was a really tricky one. Thank you for sharing it with us.
You bet. Yes, thank you.
Okay. A quick reminder for everybody that the website is myfreeactingclass.com. If you go there, you can find the link to each week's class. Ta-da! Click here for today's lesson. You can also find a video archive of all of our past the lessons, and you can sign up for the mailing list so you can get an email from me every week with like, hey, here's the video from last week, and here's some cool resources that were sent by students, and here's what to expect for this coming class. You can send your self-tapes to info@myfreeactingclass.com. And like I said, if you want me to send you a scene so that you can make a self-tape for us, then just email me there and I will send you a scene, and we can work on that for a couple of weeks. So again, I'm Michael Bean, acting teacher. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Duke and Christina and Natalia for submitting your tapes, and big thanks to Ben Cockell for coming in as our guest today.